may be seated. I do thank God today for Jesus and for his precious life. I thank God for letting me live in this great, big, beautiful world of his these 98 years. I was 18 years of age at the year of 1921 when we had our great troubles. I may say this about first the beautiful church world. My grandparents were a member of this Mount Zion Baptist Church before 1921. I remember when I was a little boy, they were bringing me in and sitting me on the front bench. And I was also thankful that the Lord let me live in this great, big, beautiful world of his. I happen to be living at the time with my grandparents on Archie Street, which is the first street on the north side of the Frisco train tracks, which crossed our city going to Oklahoma City. And on the south side of the tracks was First Street. And at that particular time, just about a block from Greenwood and Archie was the first and the last street of the color. The color of Greenwood came up to Archie and stopped at Archie. And just a few blocks south of Archie was the Frisco train track. And on the south side of the track, which was First Street, that was just a few blocks up from Greenwood, there was what we call the Ray Weed Mill, which was a grain mill, 4 or 5 stories high. And the morning of the riot, which is the long history, can't tell it all, but on the morning of the riot, men had got up into the top part of this mill, and they could look across the tracks in the back part of Jackson's funeral home. And at that particular time, I was kind of close with Mr. Jackson, who was the director of the funeral home and owner. And when we learned that there was going to be trouble in the city, that particular morning, we thought we had everything settled. Different ones had gone to town and they had talked with the leaders, and we thought everything was settled, and some of us went back to bed that night. But that morning on the 21st, we learned that there was trouble. But men had got up in the top part of this mill, and they could look over across the Frisco tracks and see the back part of the funeral home. And the back part of the funeral home where Jackson had his new ambulance at that time, he wanted us to get the ambulance and take the folks out of the trouble area. Because Archie was the dividing line, but it was the front line of the trouble. And he wanted us to get out of the trouble. And me and the young man that drove to the funeral home for Jackson went out to get the ambulance out of the back of the garage. But men up in the top part of that mill could look over and see us working, trying to get the ambulance out of the garage. And they shot over while the boy was unlocking the door and the bullet hit his hand and blood jumped out of his hand. I'm standing back behind him, and we dropped the key, and we run over left ambulance in the garage. And I've gone back to the back part of the funeral home, which was 4 or 5 bodies in the back part of the funeral home. And I passed on by the bodies, and the young man that rode for the funeral, he stayed probably talking to Jackson, but I made up my mind I was going to get over out of the trouble area, which was out on North Greenwood. Out on North Greenwood, my cousin ran a cafe and a chop joint. Some of you young ones don't know too much about chop joints, but it was a beer joint. And I was going to try to get out there. But when I got out, left this area, and when I got out there, they was fixing to pull off to go over to Clammo and to get out of the trouble. And I got there just in time to catch them, and I talked to them, got in the car. But crossing the Verdigris River down here, men came out and stopped the car, and husband, he ran the little jitney that bring folks from the north side of Greenwood downtown here to the city, and they were fixing to run off to Clammo. I got in the car, and we run off from Clammo. But out here at the Verdigris River, men come out with guns, and they stop the car, and they're taking the gun. My cousin, they had a little pistol. They take the pistol, found out nobody had used them, and they let us go on to Clammo, and we stayed in Clammo that night. But the next morning, we heard that everything was quiet. Home Guards and what had came into Tulsa, and the riot stopped. But when we got back to Tulsa, everything was burned out. Our home was right on the Archer there, and my home was burnt down, and a little bulldog killed or something. And my stepdad, he was missing, and several of the old folks that stayed right there on the Archer, we didn't see them no more, and they wouldn't let us have no funerals or nothing at that time, and we was, what you might say, in bad shape. But from that time on, I made up my mind, what you might say, when I went on to California. So much I can't tell it all, but we run off. My mother had a young brother, and he knew how to catch freight train. And many caught freight train to go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, try to catch up with my father. But when we got up to the north side of Chicago, there was a big dairy farm. And in this big dairy farm, the man was out milking his cows with automatic milkers. And we took my young uncle, who was about 20 years old, put me up to go ask the man for some food. And I went up and asked him. And this was about the 1st of June, and we didn't have nothing but our clothes that we had on our back, and that little shirt and trousers, and we didn't have no clothes. Everything was burned up in the house. But sure enough, the man, we asked him for some food, and he was so nice. He taken us in, made us wait for breakfast, taking us in for breakfast, had 2, 3, 4 little children just fat and fine, and we had such a fine breakfast, and they put a big glass of wine to each one of our plate even for breakfast. And we had this nice wine, and made me feel kind of funny because I wasn't used to it. But then after we got through breakfast, taking us downstairs and into his cellar, and he had barrels of wine down there. And so they let us go. We got back on the freight train, went on to Milwaukee. But when we got to Milwaukee, my father done left and gone to California, and we had to come on back to Tulsa. But when we got back to Tulsa, we stayed around, and the Red Cross had came in there and built some shanties, one for my mother and one for my grandmother, and they had 2 little shanties. We stayed in the little shanties for quite a long while. To tell the truth, they lasted for 3 or 4 years, right here on Otis Street. And so, but anyway, we tried to hold on, and we got a letter from my father in California, and I take my little young friend, and we catch freight train and pull out for California. But when I got to California, things kind of changed there. Can't tell it all, but when I got to California, my father was working for the movie folks, Mary Pickford and Douglas Fairbanks, and back there was silent pictures. They wasn't talking, the silent pictures, but they was fixing to go down on the beach, Santa Monica Beach, which was a lady by the name of Miss Bruce, had her cafe there, and they could eat dinner and swim in the ocean and have a big time. And so they taking us on down there, give us a big breakfast. We had a chance to swim in the ocean, and we got along pretty nice. So from then on, I was blessed, and later on when big years found out I worked with movie folks too. I served Charlie Chapman and Mary Pickford, and what's it not Mary Pickford. Trying to talk too fast here. Joan Crawford, served Joan Crawford, Mary Pickford, Charlie Chapman, and I was out there with the movie folks, and buddy with a boy called Stephanie Fetcher. Some of the older folks probably know Steph. Picked me to buddy with it, and I got to run with the spoken folks. And so I've been with the big timers ever since. May God bless y'all and stay on God's side. And I hope if you're on God's side, you're a winner. If you're not on God's side, you're a loser. May God bless